When Emma arrived at the oceanfront villa her husband claimed was for meetings, she never expected to hear laughter echoing inside, her husband's voice, her son's name, and a woman's soft giggle answering him. If you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I'll be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. Emma Sterling had always believed that love was about trust, until trust began to sound like an excuse. For 12 years, she had been the wife of Christopher Sterling, a man everyone in Seattle admired, a self-made billionaire, philanthropist, and loving family man. The kind of husband who kissed her cheek before catching a red-eye flight to business meetings and called nightly just to say goodnight. But that night, as the rain beat down against her car windshield and her son Ethan slept in the passenger seat, Emma's stomach twisted with something she'd never felt before: suspicion. Christopher had left 3 days earlier, saying he was flying to San Diego for a property deal. But something didn't feel right. The way his eyes avoided hers when he said goodbye. The way he fumbled his phone when she walked into the room. And then, this morning, a hotel receipt had arrived in the mail, the Miramar Villa, Malibu, billed to his company card. Ethan stirred beside her. "Mom? Are we almost there?" "Almost, baby," she whispered, brushing a hand through his hair. He had Christopher's golden curls, the same hazel eyes that melted her years ago. Just a surprise trip. She told herself this wasn't a confrontation. It was closed. Whatever she found tonight, she needed the truth. By the time they reached the cliffside resort, the sun had melted into gold across the Pacific. The villa loomed in the distance, glass walls reflecting the ocean, luxury cars parked outside. Emma's heart pounded. She parked down the road, her hands trembling. "Stay here, sweetheart," she said, forcing a calm smile. "Mommy's just going to say hi to Daddy." Ethan frowned. "I thought you said he's working." "I did," she said softly, "but maybe work finished early." The villa's path was lined with lanterns and orchids, beautiful but surreal. She could hear voices, laughter, clinking glasses, the distant echo of a woman's heels. Then she heard his voice. Christopher's. Smooth, confident, careless. And then, unmistakably, a woman's laughter, younger, lilting, filled with something Emma hadn't heard in years: flirtation. Emma froze. Her chest tightened as she moved closer, peeking through the slightly open glass door. Inside, Christopher was sitting on the couch, in casual linen, no tie, no wedding ring. His arm draped around a woman in a silk robe, her hair wet as though she'd just showered. Candles flickered around them, a half-finished bottle of champagne on the table. For a moment, the world went silent. The man who had sworn he loved her was right there, smiling in a way he hadn't smiled at her in years. The woman leaned in, whispering something into his ear, and Christopher chuckled. The sound tore something inside Emma. Her hands shook. She stumbled back, heart racing, until her heel snapped a twig. The sound cracked through the quiet like thunder. Christopher's head turned sharply toward the door. "Who's there?" he called out. Emma froze, breath caught. Then, before she could move, Ethan's small voice came from the car. "Mom? Can I come in now?" Christopher's eyes widened. "Emma." It was too late. He stepped outside, shock on his face as he saw her, his wife standing there in a raincoat, eyes glistening, their son walking toward him with innocent excitement. "Dad." Ethan smiled, running up. "You didn't tell me your meeting was here. This place is awesome." Behind Christopher, the young woman appeared at the door, clutching her robe. Her eyes went wide as she saw the boy, then flicked to Emma. Emma's voice trembled, but she held his gaze. "Nice place for a business trip." Christopher swallowed hard, face pale. "Emma, what are you doing here?" "I might ask you the same thing," she said, her voice cracking, but steady. "With her?" For the first time in their marriage, Christopher had no words. Inside, the champagne bubbles fizzed quietly, the sound of a lie dissolving. Emma looked between them, her husband, the stranger beside him, and the home built on betrayal. Then she turned to her son, her voice soft but firm. "Ethan, get back in the car. He blinked, confused. But now. As the boy walked away, Emma faced her husband again. You said this trip was about work. So tell me, Chris, is she part of your work too? Christopher stepped forward, guilt etched deep into every line of his face. Emma, it's not what it looks like. She laughed bitterly. Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what it is. For a long moment, neither spoke. The waves crashed below, the scent of salt filling the air, and the truth, sharp and cold, settled between them. And as Christopher tried to reach for her hand, Emma stepped back. No, she said softly. You don't get to touch me. Then, turning away, she whispered, our son just saw what kind of man his father really is. And with that, she walked toward the car, the first steps of a woman who had just lost everything, or maybe, finally found herself. Sparkle's reflection question, for viewers: if you discovered your partner living a double life, would you confront them, or walk away without a word? Comment below, I'd love to hear what you'd do. The drive back to the hotel was a blur of headlights and tears. Ethan sat silent in the passenger seat, the question trembling on his lips but never spoken. He was only 13, but he wasn't naive. The way his father's face had gone pale. The woman in the robe. The silence that followed. Emma gripped the wheel tighter, swallowing the sob that clawed its way up her throat. Don't cry now, she told herself. Not in front of him. When they reached the hotel, she parked and turned off the engine. The only sound was the ticking of the cooling metal. Ethan turned to her, his voice quiet. Mom, was that lady Dad's friend? The question pierced her like glass. She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Sometimes, adults make mistakes, sweetheart. He looked down. He lied, didn't he? Emma couldn't speak. Instead, she reached over and pulled him into her arms. For the first time, he didn't hug her back right away. That hurt most of all. The next morning, Christopher called 5 times. Emma let every call go to voicemail. She wasn't ready to hear excuses or half-truths. By the 6th call, she answered, voice flat. Emma, please. We need to talk. She stared out the hotel window at the Pacific waves rolling endlessly. Talk? You've had plenty of chances to talk, Chris. You just chose to lie instead. He sighed, frustration breaking through his calm facade. It's not what you think. Then enlighten me. What should I think, after finding my husband in a villa with another woman? It was a mistake, he said. She's a business partner. Things got complicated. Emma almost laughed. Complicated? Is that what you call infidelity now? Silence stretched. Then Christopher said softly, can you come back home, please? We can figure this out. For Ethan. The mention of their son made her chest ache. You should have thought of Ethan before you invited someone else into your bed. She hung up. 2 days later, the complicated truth hit the news. Someone, maybe a neighbor, maybe the woman herself, had taken photos. Christopher Sterling, the famously devoted billionaire husband, embracing a woman half his age on the balcony of a Malibu villa. Within hours, it was everywhere. Sterling Industries CEO caught in scandal. The billionaire and his secret getaway. Emma's phone exploded with messages. Friends, reporters, even people she hadn't spoken to in years. Her mother's voice trembled when she called. Oh, Emma, honey. I saw the news. How are you holding up? I'm fine, Mom, she lied. Just tired. What about Ethan? Emma glanced at the boy sitting on the hotel bed, earphones in, staring at nothing. He's quiet. Come stay with us for a while, her mother urged. You don't have to face this alone. Maybe she was right. But part of Emma wanted Christopher to feel the emptiness he'd created. By the end of the week, Sterling Industries was in chaos. Investors panicked, the PR team scrambled, and Christopher's clean image shattered overnight. He tried calling again, leaving voicemails that grew more desperate each time. Emma, I made a stupid mistake. Please don't destroy our family over this. I love you. I love our son. I'll fix it. Just give me a chance. But Emma couldn't unsee that night, or the years of small lies that now made sense. Late meetings. Cancelled dinners. His sudden absences. Still, a part of her mourned the man she thought she knew. It wasn't until a week later that Christopher showed up at her mother's house, uninvited. Ethan saw him first through the window. "Mom," he said quietly, "Dad's here." Emma's stomach dropped. She stepped onto the porch just as Christopher approached, wearing the same tailored suit that used to make her proud. Now it just made her tired. "Emma, please," he said, hands raised. "Can we talk? I'm begging you." Her mother watched from the doorway, protective as ever. "You can talk right here." Christopher's eyes softened. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I swear, she didn't mean anything." Emma's jaw tightened. "You took her to the house you said you built for us to retire in someday. You can't tell me she didn't mean anything." He exhaled, eyes glistening. "It was a mistake. A stupid, selfish moment. I missed you, Emma. You've been so distant since your father died, and I—" "Don't," she cut in sharply. "Don't you dare blame my grief for your betrayal." He flinched. "I'm not. I just want you to understand." "What? Do billionaires get bored? That love is disposable once it's inconvenient." Christopher's voice broke. "No. That I still love you." Emma's heart twisted, but she shook her head. "Love doesn't lie, Chris. Love doesn't humiliate the people it's supposed to protect." Behind her, Ethan's voice trembled. "Dad, why'd you do it?" Christopher turned, eyes wide. "Buddy, The boy's lip quivered. "You promised you'd never hurt Mom." That was it. The moment Christopher's perfect image truly shattered, not in tabloids or headlines, but in his son's eyes. He sank to his knees, tears spilling freely. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." Emma felt her own tears burn, but she didn't move. Because sorry wouldn't erase the scars his choices left on their family. That night, after Christopher left, Emma sat by Ethan's bedside. The boy finally spoke after hours of silence. "Are you gonna leave him, Mom?" She hesitated. "I don't know yet." He looked up at her with the kind of clarity only a child could have. If someone hurts you once, maybe they are sorry. But if they lie about it, maybe they are not. Emma smiled faintly, brushing his hair back. "You're growing up too fast." "Maybe," he said. "But I don't want you to cry anymore." Her heart broke all over again, and yet, somehow, she felt stronger than she had in years. Sparkle's reflection question, for viewers: if someone you loved betrayed your trust, but still begged for forgiveness, could you ever take them back, or is forgiveness something that should be earned, not given? Comment your thoughts below, I'd love to hear where your hearts stand. 3 weeks had passed since that night on the porch. The media frenzy had cooled slightly, but the damage was done. The Sterlings, once the picture-perfect family, were now the subject of every gossip blog and evening talk show. Emma tried to stay quiet, but it wasn't easy when strangers whispered behind her in grocery store aisles, or when paparazzi parked down the street from her mother's house, hoping for a picture of the scorned billionaire's wife. She refused to play the part they expected. Instead, she focused on small things, morning walks with Ethan, volunteering at his school, and working remotely again as an interior designer. She hadn't taken on a client in years, not since Christopher convinced her she didn't have to work if she didn't want to. Now, for the first time, she wanted to. Every evening after dinner, Ethan would sit at the kitchen table doing homework while Emma worked on her laptop, sketching floor plans and color palettes. The hum of normal life felt healing, a rhythm she hadn't realized she'd lost. Still, at night, when the house went quiet, she couldn't stop her thoughts from drifting back to Christopher. To the man who used to hold her hand across crowded rooms, who used to call her Em in a way that made her feel seen. She wondered when that stopped being enough for him. Meanwhile, Christopher's world was collapsing. He'd stepped down temporarily as CEO after the board demanded accountability. Investors threatened to pull funding, the company's stock had dropped nearly 20% in a month. He gave interviews, apologized publicly, and even donated to charities in Emma's name, all desperate attempts to rebuild an image that could no longer be polished. But what hurt him most wasn't the headlines, it was Emma's silence. He sent flowers. She sent them back. He sent handwritten letters. She never opened them. He even tried to show up at Ethan's soccer game one Saturday, standing awkwardly near the bleachers, dressed down in jeans and a baseball cap. When Ethan saw him, his expression hardened. He turned away. Christopher stayed the whole game anyway, clapping quietly when his son scored a goal. But when Emma saw him, her stomach tightened. She didn't make a scene, she just gathered their things afterward and left without a word. It was the kind of rejection that said everything words couldn't. A week later, Christopher reached out again, this time through Emma's lawyer. A formal letter. Respectful. Careful. Asking for a meeting to discuss family matters. At first, Emma refused. But her lawyer gently advised, "You don't have to decide anything today. Hearing him out doesn't mean forgiving him." So she agreed, under one condition: the meeting would be in a public place. They met at a quiet cafe downtown, the kind of place where no one would expect to see a billionaire begging for forgiveness. Christopher arrived early, waiting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee and dark circles under his eyes. Emma hesitated before sitting. He looked smaller somehow, as if guilt had chipped away at his confidence. "You look good," he said softly. She ignored the compliment. "What did you want to talk about?" He took a breath. "First, I wanted to apologize in person. Not the PR statement, not the lawyer letter. Just me. I betrayed you, and I destroyed something beautiful. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know I'm sorry." Emma studied him for a long moment. "You say that like you understand what sorry means." "I do now," he said quietly. "I lost the 2 people who made my life worth anything." She folded her hands. "You didn't just lose us, Chris. You gave us away." His throat tightened. "I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn your trust again." She almost wanted to believe him, almost. But the part of her that had cried herself to sleep refused to surrender so easily. "Ethan deserves stability," she said. "He deserves to know his parents can at least be civil." Christopher nodded quickly. "That's all I want. To be part of his life. I won't push for more." His sincerity felt real, but Emma knew words were easy. She'd believed them before. After the meeting, she sat in her car, staring out at the rain-speckled windshield. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel angry. Just tired. Forgiveness, she realized, wasn't about excusing him. It was about freeing herself from the weight of his mistakes. But she wasn't ready yet. When she returned home, Ethan was waiting on the porch. "Did you see Dad?" "I did," she said softly. "Is he coming back?" Emma shook her head. "No, sweetheart. Not for now." He nodded slowly. "Good." Her eyebrows lifted. "Good." Ethan looked down at his shoes. "You smile more now." The words nearly undid her. That night, Emma stayed up late working on a new design proposal for a client, a small bookstore renovation downtown. When she finally closed her laptop, she glanced at a framed photo of her wedding day on the shelf. She didn't cry this time. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you for teaching me what love isn't." Then she turned out the light. Across the city, Christopher sat alone in his penthouse office, staring at a photo of Emma and Ethan on his desk. The silence was deafening. He'd spent years chasing power, wealth, and validation, but now, with everything stripped away, he realized what truly mattered. He opened his phone, typing a message he knew she might never read. "I'll wait as long as it takes. Not to fix what I broke, but to become someone worthy of you again." He didn't send it. Not yet. He just stared at it until the city lights blurred into gold and tears blurred his vision. Sparkle's reflection question: for viewers, do you believe people can truly change after breaking someone's heart, or are some lessons learned too late to matter? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Would you like me to continue with Act 4, The Awakening, where Emma begins to rediscover her confidence, reconnects with her passion and identity, and faces the first test of what independence really means? It was early spring when Emma finally stopped checking the news. The scandal had faded, replaced by newer stories, newer mistakes. People moved on, and, slowly, so did she. Her days found rhythm again, school drop-offs, design consultations, long walks with coffee in hand. There was peace in the ordinary, in the simple act of living for herself. She'd rented a small, sunlit apartment downtown, nothing luxurious, but filled with warmth. Plants thrived by the window, paint samples covered the dining table, and Ethan's laughter echoed through every room. It wasn't the life she once had, but somehow, it felt more real. Her interior design business began to take off faster than she expected. Clients loved her attention to emotion, the way she designed spaces that felt like healing. Maybe it was because she was healing herself in every project. One day, while she was meeting with a bookstore owner named Lila, she noticed something unusual. She was laughing. Genuinely. Lila grinned. "You've got a gift, you know that? You don't just make spaces beautiful. You make people believe again." Emma smiled, a little shyly. "I guess I'm learning to believe again too." When she left the store that evening, the sky was streaked with pink and gold. She stood on the sidewalk, breathing in the city air, and for the first time in a long time, she felt light. That night, Ethan found her sitting by the window with her sketchbook. "Mom," he said, climbing onto the couch beside her. "Do you ever miss him?" Emma thought for a moment. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But I think I miss the person I thought he was, not the one he became." Ethan leaned his head on her shoulder. "I think people change. Sometimes for good, sometimes for bad." She smiled softly. "You're wiser than I was at your age." He shrugged. "You're stronger than you think." Her eyes welled with tears, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from pride. A few weeks later, Emma was invited to speak at a women's business event in Seattle, a panel on rebuilding after loss. She almost said no. She wasn't ready to stand in front of strangers and admit her story still hurt. But then she remembered something her therapist once told her: your story might be someone else's survival guide. So she went. Standing on stage, microphone trembling slightly in her hand, she looked out at a room full of women, some smiling, some scarred, some just barely holding on. "I used to think strength meant staying," she began. "That if you loved someone enough, you could forgive anything. But strength isn't about staying where you're hurt. It's about knowing when to walk away, and believing you can still build something beautiful after." The room was silent. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Until the sound swelled into a standing ovation that brought tears to Emma's eyes. For the first time since her world fell apart, she felt proud of her pain. Because it had transformed her into someone she never thought she could be. That night, after the event, she checked her phone, and froze. A message from Christopher. Short. Simple. "I saw your speech. You were incredible. I'm proud of you." She stared at it for a long time before typing back. "Thank you." She didn't add anything else. No bitterness. No hope. Just gratitude. Because maybe that was enough. A few days later, Emma received a surprise visit from Lila, the bookstore owner. "I have a crazy idea," Lila said, practically glowing. "I want to open a second store. But not just books, a place for women to gather, share stories, host talks like yours. I want you to design it." Emma blinked. "Me?" Lila nodded. "You're not just a designer, Emma. You're a storyteller. You help people see beauty after chaos." Something inside her clicked. A place for women to find their voices again. She agreed. And as she drew up plans for the new space, bright walls, soft corners, and a cozy reading nook with a sign that read "Begin Again," she realized this was more than a job. It was a mirror of her own life. Spring melted into early summer. Christopher's company stabilized under new leadership, and though his public life quieted, his private one didn't. He visited Ethan often, always respectful, never overstepping. He and Emma talked occasionally about logistics, school events, schedules. Nothing personal. But sometimes, when their eyes met across a crowded field or a parent meeting, there was a quiet understanding there, something like peace. They would never be what they were before. But they could be something better, honest. One evening, after Ethan went to bed, Emma stood on her balcony overlooking the city lights. She held a glass of wine, listening to the hum of traffic and distant laughter. For years, she'd been defined by someone else's success, someone else's choices. Now, her life was her own, imperfect, unpredictable, but hers. She thought about the woman she was a year ago, trembling outside a villa, watching her world collapse, and she whispered, "Thank you for surviving." Because that woman, broken and betrayed, had built the foundation for everything she was now. Sparkle's reflection question, for viewers: have you ever had to rebuild your life after someone broke your trust? What was the moment you realized you were finally healing? Share your story in the comments, someone might need to hear it tonight. Would you like me to continue with Act 5, the turning point, where Christopher faces his lowest moment yet and makes a decision that forces Emma to confront whether forgiveness, not love, is still possible? You said yes. AI Humanizer said perfect. White heavy checkmark. Now we'll move into Act 5, the turning point, approx. 1,000 words, the emotional pivot where Christopher faces the consequences of his actions at their deepest level, and Emma is forced to decide whether her heart is truly ready to let go, or let forgiveness find a way in. ACT 5, the turning point, approx. 1,000 words. Autumn arrived with quiet rain and gold-tinted leaves, painting the city in soft melancholy. Emma loved this time of year, the way it reminded her that change could be beautiful, that endings were just beginnings dressed in new colors. Her design work thrived. The new bookstore, Begin Again, was nearly finished. Ethan had grown taller, his smile wider, his laughter more frequent. Life had found its rhythm again. Until the call came. It was a Wednesday morning when her phone rang, an unfamiliar number. "Mrs. Sterling," a calm male voice said. "This is Dr. Patel from Seattle General Hospital. Your husband's been admitted, there's been an accident." For a moment, the world froze. "An accident," she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes. A car collision on the 405. He's stable now, but we'd recommend you come in. He listed you as his emergency contact." She stood there, phone pressed to her ear, her mind spinning. She wasn't his wife anymore, not really, but the sound of those words brought every buried feeling rushing back. "I'll be there," she said. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and sorrow. When she entered his room, Christopher lay pale and motionless, a small bandage above his temple, his left arm in a cast. Machines beeped steadily, filling the silence she didn't know how to break. For a long time, she just stood there, staring at the man who had once been her whole world. He looked human. Fragile. Not the confident billionaire in control of everything, but a man stripped bare by consequence and pain. He stirred, eyes fluttering open. When he saw her, confusion flickered, then softened into relief. "Emma," his voice cracked. "You came." She swallowed. "You listed me as your emergency contact." A faint smile touched his lips. "I guess, part of me always knew you'd come anyway." She didn't answer. After a moment, he whispered, "I didn't want you to see me like this." "Why?" she asked. "Vulnerability isn't weakness, Chris." He exhaled shakily. "I know that now. Took me losing everything to learn." Over the next few days, Emma visited. Not out of obligation, but because something deeper, quieter, pulled her there. Christopher didn't talk much about himself. He asked about Ethan, about her work, about the bookstore project. There was no arrogance in his tone now, no pretense. Just humility. One afternoon, she brought Ethan with her. The boy hesitated at first, standing in the doorway. "Hey, champ," Christopher said softly, managing a smile. "You got taller." Ethan nodded. "You look different." Christopher laughed weakly. Hospital gowns have that effect. The boy didn't smile, but he walked closer. "Are you gonna be okay?" "I will be," his father said. "Thanks to your mom." Emma blinked, caught off guard. "Me?" He nodded slowly. "You showing up means more than you know." Later that evening, as they left, Ethan turned to her. "Mom, I think he's really sorry this time." Emma sighed. "Maybe. But sorry doesn't erase what happened." Ethan looked thoughtful. "No, but it's a start, right?" She didn't answer, but his words lingered all night. Christopher was discharged a week later. Before leaving, he handed Emma a sealed envelope. "What's this?" she asked. "A letter," he said quietly. "Not to ask for forgiveness. Just to tell you the truth I never said." When she got home, she waited until Ethan was asleep before opening it. Inside was a single page, handwritten in the familiar curve of his pen. "Emma, the night you found me wasn't the first time I betrayed you, it was the first time I got caught. The truth is, I'd been lying to myself long before I lied to you. I convinced myself I could be a good man and still do selfish things. I was wrong. I lost myself chasing validation, pretending success could replace connection. You loved me when I didn't deserve it, and instead of honoring that, I destroyed it. I can't undo the damage, but I can live differently because of it. And that starts with one thing, being honest. I won't ask you to come back. You deserve peace, and I hope you've found it. But if one day forgiveness ever finds you, not for me, but for you, I'll be grateful. Always, Christopher." Emma read the letter twice, tears blurring the ink. Not because she wanted him back, but because, for the first time, she believed his remorse was real. Weeks passed. Christopher recovered slowly, and his visits with Ethan became more frequent. They were awkward at first, but gentle, rebuilding something small and fragile, father and son learning from each other again. One afternoon, after Ethan's soccer practice, Christopher approached Emma outside the field. He smiled faintly. "You look happy." "I am," she said. "For the first time in a long while." He nodded, his eyes warm. "Good. You deserve that." There was a pause, one heavy with years of love, hurt, and unfinished words. "I don't expect a second chance," he said softly. "But, thank you for giving me space to become a better man, even if it's not for you." Emma smiled, not out of longing, but grace. "Maybe that's what love really is, Chris. Not holding on, but letting someone grow, even when it's apart." He exhaled, a quiet peace settling over his features. "Maybe so." As he turned to leave, she watched him go, no bitterness, no anger. Just closure. That night, Emma and Ethan sat on their balcony, watching the city glow below. "Mom," Ethan said suddenly, "do you think people can change?" She smiled softly. "I think people can learn. And sometimes learning is what changes them." He nodded, satisfied. "I think you changed too." She laughed gently. "Oh, I definitely did." "Good," he said, leaning his head against her shoulder. "I like this version of you." Emma kissed his forehead. "So do I, sweetheart." "So do I." Sparkle's reflection question, for viewers: if someone you love truly changed, not for you, but for themselves, could you ever look at them the same way again? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Would you like me to continue with Act 6, The Crossroads, where Emma faces an unexpected opportunity that could redefine her and Ethan's future, and force her to choose between comfort, closure, and a completely new beginning? Winter came early that year. The air had turned sharp and silver, the streets wrapped in soft mist and frost-kissed trees. Emma stood inside the bookstore she'd designed, Begin Again, as sunlight filtered through the tall windows, glinting on shelves of polished wood and golden lettering. It wasn't just a store anymore. It was a sanctuary, a symbol of every bruise she'd survived, every quiet night she'd built herself back up from nothing. The grand opening was that evening. Ethan darted between aisles, laughing, arranging stacks of books into towers far too high for his reach. "Mom, they put your name on the brochure. It says, Interior Design by Emma Sterling." Emma smiled. "Guess I'm official now." She didn't notice the man standing in the doorway at first. "Official, unimpressive," a familiar voice said. Her heart skipped. Christopher stood there, dressed in a simple coat, no entourage, no polished mask of power. Just him. Chris, she said carefully. He smiled faintly. Relax. I'm not here to cause a scene. Ethan invited me to the opening. Her son appeared beside her, sheepish. I thought it'd be okay, Mom. He helped sponsor the reading program for the kids. Emma blinked. You did? Christopher nodded. A small grant. Figured if I could help more kids fall in love with stories, maybe I'd finally give something good back. For a moment, silence hovered. The kind that feels both heavy and healing. Later that evening, the store filled with laughter and light. Local authors, teachers, families, they all came to celebrate the space that felt like home. Christopher stayed quietly in the background, content to watch Emma work the room with grace. He wasn't there as the billionaire husband anymore. He was just a man, quietly proud of the woman he once broke, and who somehow became even stronger for it. When the speeches ended, Emma walked outside for a breath of cold air. Christopher followed. You did all this, he said softly. You built something beautiful. She glanced at him, a bittersweet smile playing on her lips. Maybe pain has a way of becoming art if you let it. He nodded, eyes on the night sky. You always had a gift for that, turning heartbreak into hope. They stood there in silence for a while, the hum of laughter echoing faintly behind them. Then, Christopher spoke again. There's something I didn't tell you before, he said. After the accident, I started therapy. Real therapy. Not for show. I've been in it for 8 months now. Emma looked at him, searching his face for signs of performative guilt, but there were none. Just honesty. That's good, Chris, she said softly. Really good. I needed to understand why I destroyed the things I loved, he continued. Why I thought control was safer than vulnerability. The truth is, I wasn't afraid of losing you, I was afraid of being seen by you. Her breath caught. I saw you, Chris, she whispered. Even when you tried to hide. You just didn't believe it. He looked at her then, really looked. Do you ever think about us? About what could have been if I hadn't? She didn't let him finish. Sometimes, she admitted. But then I remember, maybe what we were isn't what we were meant to stay. A single tear traced his cheek, and he didn't bother to hide it. I guess I just needed to hear you say it. I forgive you, she said quietly. Truly. Those 3 words weren't soft. They were powerful. They carried the weight of letting go. Days later, an email changed everything. A global design company based in London had seen Emma's work in Begin Again. They wanted her to lead a new project overseas, a 6-month contract designing children's literacy spaces in schools. It was everything she'd ever dreamed of, but it meant leaving Seattle. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the offer. Ethan munched cereal beside her. Mom, he said, mouth full. Why do you look like you just saw a ghost? She smiled faintly. Because someone wants me to design for kids, in London. His eyes went wide. London? As in, where they have castles and accents. The very same. Can we go? He asked immediately. Please. Emma laughed. It's a big decision, honey. That night, she found herself pacing by the window, torn between stability and possibility. Part of her feared that leaving might undo the fragile peace she'd built, especially for Ethan. But another part whispered, maybe this is the chapter you were meant to write next. She called Christopher. He answered on the second ring. Emma. I got an offer. London. It's huge, Chris. But I don't know if it's the right move for Ethan. There was a pause. Then he said, you should take it. She frowned. Just like that. Emma, this is your dream, he said. You gave up so much for me, for our life. Don't let fear stop you now. His voice broke slightly. And as for Ethan, he'll be fine. Because he's got your strength. Take him. Let him see the world. Don't worry about me. She closed her eyes. You really have changed. He chuckled softly. Yeah. Guess I finally learned how to love someone without trying to own them. For the first time, she didn't feel sad. She felt proud. A month later, Emma and Ethan boarded their flight. Christopher came to the airport to see them off. As they hugged goodbye, he knelt to meet Ethan's eyes. "You take care of your mom, champ. And call me whenever you miss me." "I will," Ethan said, hugging him tightly. "Promise." Then Christopher looked up at Emma. "Take care of yourself, too." She smiled. "I intend to." And with that, they parted, not as broken lovers, but as two souls who had finally set each other free. As the plane soared into the clouds, Emma looked out the window, her reflection blending with the horizon. Ethan dozed beside her, his hand resting on hers. She whispered, "We're beginning again, kiddo." And for the first time in years, her heart felt completely light. Would you choose safety where you are, or the risk of a brand new beginning, even if it means leaving someone you once loved behind? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. London was alive in a way Emma hadn't expected. Rain polished the streets into mirrors, and the air buzzed with the hum of stories being written in every corner cafe. She and Ethan moved into a small flat near Primrose Hill, cozy, creaky, and perfect. The first morning, she brewed coffee and watched the city wake below her balcony. Ethan ran around excitedly, testing his British accent on every sentence. "Hello, Mum. Fancy a cuppa?" She laughed. "You sound like a cartoon character." He grinned. "I'm practicing for school." Emma smiled. His joy was contagious. Maybe this was what peace looked like. Not silence, but laughter after a storm. Work was exhilarating. The company, Bright Futures Design, tasked her with transforming old-school libraries into creative, story-filled sanctuaries. Every project carried echoes of her journey, spaces that whispered, "You are safe. You can begin again." Her supervisor, a charming architect named Adrian Wells, immediately noticed her gift for emotional storytelling through design. One afternoon, as they reviewed sketches in his office, Adrian leaned back and said, "You don't design rooms, Emma. You design healing. How do you do that?" She smiled. "By remembering what it felt like to need it." He looked at her then, a long, gentle look that said he saw her, even the unspoken parts. Weeks turned into months. Emma found herself smiling more, sleeping better, feeling alive. Adrian became both colleague and friend, thoughtful, calm, with the kind of quiet humor that softened even her hardest days. But she wasn't naive. She promised herself not to lose her identity to someone else again. Still, there was something about Adrian's presence that made the idea of someday seem less impossible. One rainy evening, after a long day of planning, he walked her to her flat. The city glowed with wet lights, and the air smelled of jasmine and rain. "Emma," he said softly, as they reached her door. "If I said I'd like to know you, not just your work, would that scare you?" She met his gaze. "A little." He smiled. "Then I'll start small. Coffee tomorrow?" She hesitated, then nodded. Coffee sounds safe. That night, she found herself staring at her reflection in the window, heart steady, not racing. This is different, she thought. Not the dizzy rush of old love, but the slow, grounded warmth of something real. Still, a shadow lingered, not of longing, but of unfinished understanding. Christopher's story still echoed quietly at the edges of her new life. She wondered how he was. A week later, an email arrived unexpectedly. Subject line, Update, Christopher Sterling Foundation. She clicked it. It was a newsletter, one she hadn't realized she was subscribed to, announcing that Christopher's company had officially launched a foundation for women in business, focusing on providing startup funding for single mothers. There, in the article, was a quote from him. "True success isn't measured by profit, but by the lives you help rebuild, including your own." Emma stared at the screen, stunned. Not because of the foundation, but because she recognized those words. She'd said something similar once, years ago, in one of their late-night talks when they were still in love. Maybe he'd finally understood. Later that evening, she and Ethan shared takeout on the floor. He asked, "Mom, do you miss Dad?" She paused. "I think I miss what we learned from each other." He nodded thoughtfully. "He told me he started helping moms like you. I think that's cool." Emma smiled softly. "It is." Ethan grinned. "Then you helped him too, right? Like, you both fixed each other, just not together." His words hit deeper than he knew. She reached over, brushing his hair from his forehead. "Yeah, sweetheart. Something like that." Weeks later, Emma stood in front of a group of design students, guest speaking about emotional spaces. Afterward, a young woman approached her. "Your story about rebuilding after loss, it sounded like you've lived it." Emma smiled faintly. "Maybe I have." The woman hesitated, then said, "You made me believe I can start over too." "Thank you." It was then that Emma realized she hadn't just survived. She transformed. Her pain had become purposeful. One evening, as she packed up drawings in her studio, her phone buzzed, a video call from Christopher. She hesitated before answering. His face appeared softer, older. Behind him was a bright, modern space with a banner that read the Sterling Foundation launch event. "Emma," he said with a small smile. "I didn't want to call unannounced, but I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For all of it. For walking away when you had to. For making me realize who I was, and who I didn't want to be anymore." She felt tears sting her eyes. "You did that yourself, Chris." He nodded. "Maybe. But you were the reason I tried." There was a pause. Then he added, "I heard about your London project. I'm proud of you." "Thank you," she said softly. "I'm proud of you too." He smiled, genuine, unguarded. "We did okay, didn't we?" She chuckled. "Yeah. We did." They said goodbye, not with regret, but gratitude. It felt like the final page of a chapter written with grace. That night, Adrian stopped by with coffee. He found her sitting by the window, tears glistening in her eyes. He hesitated. "Bad day?" She shook her head, smiling through it. "No. Just a full circle kind of day." He handed her a cup. "To circles, then, the ones that lead us back to ourselves." She laughed quietly. "I'll drink that." As they clinked cups, she realized something powerful. Forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past. It was about reclaiming her future. And in that moment, looking out at London's rain-kissed lights, she finally felt it, peace. Do you believe closure comes from others, or from finally forgiving yourself for what you had to do to survive? Tell me what you think below. Your story might help someone else find theirs. Spring in London arrived like a promise, soft, hesitant, and full of light. The city's grey edges melted into color again, and Emma felt the same awakening inside her chest. She and Ethan had been in London for almost a year now. Their flat smelled of lavender and paint. Her projects continued to thrive, and she'd just signed an extension to stay another year. For the first time, the future didn't feel uncertain, it felt open. One Saturday morning, she and Ethan walked along the Thames, watching boats drift lazily on the water. "Mom," he said, kicking a pebble. "Do you think we'll ever go back to Seattle?" She smiled softly. "Maybe one day. But I kind of like it here." He nodded. "Me too. Feels like we're home, even though it's not where we started." Her heart swelled. "Home isn't where you start, Ethan. It's where you heal." He grinned, slipping his hand into hers. "Then I guess we did it." Later that afternoon, as she packed sketches for another school renovation, the delivery arrived at her door. A box, no sender's name, no note. Inside was a framed newspaper clipping. It was an article from the Seattle Times. Sterling Foundation expands to Europe, CEO credits his family for inspiration. Below it was a handwritten line in familiar ink. "Because you taught me what real legacy means." See. Emma smiled, eyes misting. She placed the frame on her bookshelf, beside a picture of Ethan and herself at Primrose Hill. It didn't hurt to see his name anymore. It simply reminded her how far they'd both come. Weeks later, Adrian invited her to a gallery event, a charity exhibition where artists donated pieces inspired by rebirth. "I think you'll like this one," he said as they arrived. "It's called After the Rain." The painting stopped her cold. It was a soft depiction of a woman standing in a storm, her umbrella broken, her face turned toward the light. Not defeated, becoming. She felt her throat tighten. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Adrian nodded. "The artist said it's about finding strength in surrender. Reminds me of someone I know." She looked at him, realizing, not for the first time, that Adrian didn't want to fix her. He wanted to walk beside her. He reached for her hand, gently, not asking for permission but waiting for it. She didn't pull away. That night, they walked through the city after the event, rain glistening on cobblestones. "Emma," Adrian said, his tone soft, almost reverent. "Do you ever think about going back to who you were before?" She shook her head. "No." That woman didn't know she could survive this much. He smiled. "Then here's to the woman who did." She smiled back, heart warm. "Here's to the woman who's still becoming." And when he leaned in, gentle, patient, she let him. Not because she needed to be saved, but because she was finally ready to feel without fear. Months passed like pages turning gently. Ethan adjusted to school beautifully, his accent now proudly muddled, part Seattle, part London. He played football on weekends, drew stories about dragons and second chances, and wrote an essay titled, "My Mom is My Hero." When Emma read it, tears streamed down her cheeks. She's not scared of starting over. She builds things that make people happy. And she taught me that love doesn't end when people stop being together, it just changes shape. She folded the paper gently and placed it in her journal. One afternoon, she got a call from Christopher. His voice was steady, peaceful. "Emma," he said. "I just wanted you to know, we're opening our first European Foundation office next month. In London." She smiled. "Congratulations. I was wondering," he continued, "if you and Ethan would like to come to the launch. It's not a public invite. More like a personal thank you." She hesitated, then said, "We'll be there." The event was simple, elegant, intimate. When Christopher took the stage, Emma stood in the crowd beside Ethan and Adrian. He spoke with calm conviction, not as a man performing remorse, but as one who had made peace with himself. "This foundation isn't about me," he said. "It's about rebuilding from brokenness. It's about realizing that sometimes, the greatest gift love can give is the freedom to walk away, and the strength to wish each other well." His eyes met Emma's briefly in the crowd. She smiled, small, but full of pride. When the applause ended, he approached her quietly. "Thank you for coming." "I wouldn't have missed it," she said. He glanced at Adrian beside her, then back at her. "You look happy." "I am." He nodded. "Then I am too." And that was it. No longing. No unfinished words. Just understanding, the kind that only comes when two people have truly healed. That night, after tucking Ethan into bed, Emma stood by the window, the London skyline shimmering beyond the glass. Adrian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Thinking about the past," he murmured. "Thinking about how far I've come," she said. He smiled. "And where are you going next?" She turned to face him. "Wherever it is, I'm not afraid anymore." He kissed her forehead softly. "Good." Outside, the city glowed. Inside, her heart finally rested. Months later, Begin Again London, the second bookstore she designed, opened to the public. At the front door hung a simple sign. Dedicated to those who had to break to find their light. Ethan read it aloud, grinning. "That's us, isn't it?" Emma smiled, her hand resting on his shoulder. "That's everyone who learns to start again." They stood there, sunlight pouring over them, both of them radiant, proof that even the deepest heartbreak can bloom into something breathtaking. Would you have forgiven like Emma did, not to reopen a door, but to close it with grace? And if life handed you a second chance, would you take it, even if it looked nothing like the first? Thank you for watching. You can click on next button on your screen for more exclusive content. Please don't forget to click the follow and subscribe button.